Hello, everybody. I'm Steve Smith from the Homicide and Missing Persons Unit. Today, we're here to announce an arrest in the 1998 homicide of Donna Oglive. She was 24 years old at the time. She was from British Columbia. She'd only been in Toronto about 5 weeks at the time. The homicide occurred at 130 Carleton Street in Toronto, and the method that she was killed was strangulation. On Wednesday night about midnight, we arrested Ronald Gordon Ackerman, 50 years old, of Gander, Newfoundland. We'd arrested him at Toronto Pearson International Airport just after midnight. He was flying in from Edmonton. We intercepted him in Toronto. He's been charged with first-degree murder. He's in the court system right now. Right now he's being held in custody. It was investigative genetic genealogy that led us to this arrest. We'd had the accused's DNA at the crime scene, but he was unknown to us. We were able to, in 2022, utilize investigative genetic genealogy that led us to the offender's family. We were able to collect a DNA sample and prove that Mr. Ackerman was the person responsible for the death of Miss Oglive. There's a number of people that we'd like to thank. First of all, the Solicitor General of Ontario, who's provided us with the funds in order to conduct IgG throughout Ontario. Ontario's basically the leader in IgG testing, as you've seen by the number of arrests that we've put forward. Hopefully we continue this program over the next few years. We'd also like to thank Othram Inc. for their testing, the Center of Forensic Science for all of their testing that they helped us out with in the DNA. We'd also like to thank Edmonton and Calgary Police, as well as the RCMP in both Alberta and Newfoundland. Internally, we'd like to thank everybody from the Homicide and Missing Persons Unit, the active side, the cold case unit, our Missing Persons Unit, and especially our genealogists who are all in the back here. They did a great job on this. So we'd also like to thank our Forensic Identification Unit, our Sex Crimes Unit, and all the investigators that worked on this before, as well as Intelligence and 22 Division for letting us process Mr. Ackerman through 22 Division. Is there any questions?
What is your theory of what happened?
I mean, that's variable, but it looks like it may have been a sex trade transaction, and it ended in the death of Miss Oglive.
Can you just talk about when you believe that you kind of got down to Mr. Ackerman was the suspect, what the timeline was, because obviously you've been investigating this for quite some time now. Even maybe go back as far as to when you had the DNA and then when you kind of made the determination that he was your guy and had him intercepted.
Yeah, we've had the DNA for a number of years, but obviously there was no hit on the National DNA Data Bank for us. That's why we've hoped to expand our NDDB to get some more hits. But we didn't have that, so we had to employ IgG. And it's been in about the last year that we've really narrowed it down and been able to confirm Mr. Ackerman as the offender.
How did you know that he was coming in from Edmonton, kind of tracking along the way?
We have our investigative means. We knew he was working out in Alberta for 2 weeks at a time and then flying back to the East Coast for 2 weeks at a time. So we were able to determine that he was going to be coming through Toronto.
Steph, can I ask you, congratulations, by the way, that's fantastic work.
Thanks, Steve.
Does she have next of kin, and did you make the notification to the family, and if so, can you describe that? I can appreciate that feeling it's like to do so, but for those that don't know, can you describe that?
So in Canada, she has very little family. There's only really one person, so I don't want to get into it too much. But that person isn't in Ontario. So.
Your perspective, though, I mean, as an investigator, solving a case like this, what is it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially these historical cases, they've gone on for so long. There's a lot of them. I mean, they're in the news all the time. As you know, Steve, you know, we have over 800 historical homicides alone. So when you're able to solve these cases, it's a great feeling. It's great to notify the family, and it's, I mean, it's great for our unit. it's nice to make sure, especially when these people are still alive, that they have to come and face justice, no matter how long it's going to be. And I mean, with IGG now, anybody that committed sexual assaults or homicides over the past 40, 50 years, if they're still alive, I mean, they'd be expecting a knock on their door at any point.
Well, you've done some great work, sir.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the suspect? What was, he's living in Newfoundland now, did he have a family? What kind of, career did he have? Just what was his life like in Newfoundland before his arrest?
Yeah, I mean, he's living in Newfoundland, and he's working in the oil fields in northern Alberta for 2 weeks at a time. He does have a family. I don't want to get into too much. Obviously, his family has nothing to do with this. But that's part of why we're here today. I mean, we need to find out what he's been doing over the past 25 years and make sure that there are no other victims, whether sexually motivated or homicides, that he could be involved in.
Is that being investigated right now?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's always whenever you arrest someone in these historical events, you always have to go back and go through the years that they were out and about without anyone knowing that they were the offender. The arrest was uneventful. He came off the plane and we just walked him aside. There was no issues whatsoever.
Can you speak a little bit more about the victim? More about her. Again, you said she'd only been here a couple weeks.
Yeah. She was a sex trade worker. We've been in touch with a number of people from the Sex Trade Alliance that have really been instrumental in keeping this case at the forefront. And she was only here for 5 weeks at the time. So she was here and she unfortunately ended up deceased within 5 weeks.
I know she was pregnant at the time of the murder. Did she have a child also? Was she a mother at the time?
She was.
And Detective, at that time, there was some investigations in the West End, some other sex trade workers for homicides. Is your accused here possibly linked to those? Is that something you're looking into?
No, absolutely not.
Can you just explain, I've covered a few of these now in the last couple of years where this technology has led to breaking cold cases. Can you just explain kind of what kind of a difference this technology makes, and should we now kind of expect more of these arrests to come kind of trickling through in future years?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as more police services adapt this technology, it's really a game changer for us. I mean, the two ways to solve historical cases are, changes in relationships and changes in science. And this change in science has allowed us to look at DNA in a different way. It allows us to, if we have offender DNA, to solve virtually any case that's out there.
Determine what the suspect was doing in Toronto back in 1998, or any details about his movement back then?
He was living here in Scarborough, and he was working as a truck driver at the time.
Any other questions?
So just technicality, can you just, he's 50 now, correct? Correct. So that, I mean, he was about this relatively close to the same age as the
Yeah, he was 25 at the time.
Sorry, just one last thing. You gave the address. Where was it, in an apartment, in a unit?
So at that time, 130 Carleton was a large parking lot. It was utilized for Maple Leaf Gardens at the time. I believe it's a condo now, but at the time it was a parking lot, and there was a lot of sexual activity from the sex trade workers in that parking lot.
Is there reason to believe that the suspect, I mean, back to 98, the suspect after this murder, did the suspect leave Toronto right away? Did the suspect hang around for a while? Do you have any information on that?
Yeah, he didn't leave immediately, so soon after, but not immediately.
I know the arrest was uneventful, but I believe you covered a couple of cold case arrests here, and I'm not sure if it was yourself or somebody else, but they said that when these arrests are made, oftentimes the suspect is relieved or expects it. Was there any of that in this case, or was he surprised by it?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably after 25 years, you're surprised when that knock comes at your door, but you could be right. I mean, I don't know what goes on in his head, but I think most people would probably relive an event like this for the past 25 years, and once it's finally over, it may actually be relief.
Is he cooperating with the investigation in any way?
He's following his lawyer's advice right now.
And what do we think is his relationship to Donna? Was he a client or a John?
Well, I mean, it's our belief that he was probably a client that night. Whether it was a consistent thing or a one-night thing, we're not really sure.
Okay, one last question.
You said he had a child, sorry, she had a child, so one child and she was pregnant.
Correct.